Welcome back, guys, to the episode of the NFL Universe. I'm by myself today. Max was unfortunately busy. With that being said, a ton of news to cover this week. The trade deadline just happened. It's about 5 o'clock on Tuesday. I waited till 4 o'clock to make sure that was over, just to make sure I got all the news in, because obviously nothing more than typical releases up until this point. But a ton of news this week. We got to cover week 8 and then my predictions for week 9. So I'm going to start off with the news at first. Just going through our list here. If you guys are looking for any graphics or list of any of these news reports, it's on our Instagram, which we recently opened up. It's the NFLuniverse.tsu on Instagram. So go ahead and check it out. One thing I like to start off with is Derrick Henry is out 6 to 10 weeks with a foot injury. Had surgery on it, I think, this morning, and it apparently went well. Should be back. I'd imagine Derrick Henry probably would be back with that 6-week mark, which is fantastic, considering the fact that I thought he was going to be out for the entire season. Titans go ahead and pick up Adrian Peterson, 7-time Pro Bowler. Everyone knows Adrian Peterson, one of the best running backs of all time, to help step into the rotation. Should be an interesting dynamic in terms of who gets touches, because I know they have Nichols, I believe, as their backup running back. I know Julio Jones, he can stay on the field and not be injured. He'll probably get more touches, A.J. Brown as well. That offense is still powerful, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be the same without Derrick Henry. So best of luck to him. It might hurt the Titans a little bit, but I still think they're going to nail the playoffs. If you're a Titans fan, I really wouldn't be too overly concerned. Moving on from there, unfortunately, Packers will go ahead and release Jalen Smith. I'd imagine between his injuries and his fit on the team, it just wasn't worth paying him. He wasn't really going to help the team out all that much in terms of where they are in the season at this point. So they're going to go ahead and release him. I wouldn't be surprised if he signs with another team up at this point, because, again, still a roughly talented linebacker, just can't stay healthy. We went from there. Charles Omenihu, I'm still struggling with his name, got traded to the 49ers and the Texans. Not much, but big thing there. Another piece of news we have is Melvin Ingram was traded to the Chiefs. Apparently he was going to sign with the Chiefs in the offseason, but things didn't work out. I believe they traded a 6th-round draft pick to him for the Steelers. Melvin Ingram started with 100% snaps, I believe, up until week 3 for the Steelers, and he's fallen to like about a quarter of the snaps. Really haven't been using him much, so I think he wanted to go to a team that's more of a contender, technically. Not really the Chiefs right now, but if he goes ahead and stays there, then maybe I think the Chiefs are at a point right now where they're not going to make the playoffs this year, but they will be a contender in the future. So not a horrible landing spot for him. Moving on from there, Deshaun Watson, who wasn't traded to the Dolphins. Apparently, the Dolphins really wanted him to clear up his legal issues, and I think will come at a later point. I believe the Dolphins head office, whether it be the coach, whether it be the GM, were a little, back and forth upon whether they wanted to trade him, because they have to really haven't given him a fair chance. So I decided not to go for Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson will be Texans for the rest of the season. In terms of fantasy football, you might as well drop him now. He will not be touching the field, even if he does clear up everything. He doesn't want to play for the Texans, so they're going to have to wait till the offseason and trade him. Moving on from there, Sean Jackson was released about 15 minutes post the deadline, I believe, about half an hour post the deadline. So obviously he requested a trade that became public during the week. They could not find a trade partner, so they got to release him. 34-year-old receiver with still a decent amount of talent. Wouldn't be surprised if he heads to a different contender where he can see more of the field, because that was one of his biggest issues. That's why he requested it. It was a respectful request in terms of he wanted to see the field more. So it should be interesting to see where he goes. Although Beckham wasn't traded, there was a lot of rumors stirring around. Apparently, one of the trades that might have came out was the Saints. Things didn't line up, so I think the Browns technically are shopping OBJ. The Browns are looking to make a difference in terms of their wide receiver core, because they just really haven't been overly impactful for the amount that they're paying and what they should have between Jarvis Landry, Odell. Odell really hasn't lived up to the trade to the Giants, which means the Giants was really pissed off at the time, but Giants kind of won that one in the long run in terms of Odell just really has not been the same player that he was when he was with the Giants. So going through I think the biggest piece of news for the week, also Calvin Ridley stepped away from football. We don't know for how long, but due to personal issues. Don't know really what it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if those personal issues just he doesn't want to play for the team because they're so abysmal. And just going through the list, J.J. Watt is out for the rest of the season with a I forget what injury it was. It was a shoulder injury. It was a shoulder surgery. Yeah, shoulder injury. Out for the season. He was having a pretty decent season. It was a big part of that Cardinals pass rush, but he's out for the season. Hate to see it. And then I think beyond that, the only biggest piece of news I could think is the Rams going ahead and trading for Von Miller, which was pretty big. In terms of that trade, I really do think the Denver Broncos won that trade, and I'll say in a couple of reasons why. I think it helps the Rams out a little bit, but nothing crazy, right? Von Miller has really regressed in the past couple of years. He's still a good pass rusher, don't get me wrong. I think he has 4.5 sacks on the year in, 8 games now. Not terrible, but not really the old Von Miller. 32 years old on the last year of his contract. Given the Rams don't really have to pay anything, I think the Rams are going to pay him about $700,000, which a lot of money to us common folk, but in terms of the NFL, in terms of what they're worth, not as much, right? So they're not having to shell out a ton of money. The real issue is they give away a second and third round pick, which the Rams have really put themselves in a position where their draft capital is not fantastic. So they're kind of in a win-all situation, which I had a little bit of debate about this in my group chat. I don't think the sell out and win-all is really the right move in the NFL. I think you should want to try and find a place where you can contend for a Super Bowl spot every single year, not try and sell out for 1 year. And I brought in the Eagles, and they kind of signed all these veterans and set up a team where they were a 1-year wonder in 2015. They won the Super Bowl, and they really have been abysmal ever since. I think a team like the Giants, where they kind of went all in on 2015, got a first-round exit, have been abysmal ever since. Versus a team like the Chiefs or the Patriots, who they have a good quarterback, and then they continue to try and contend with signing veterans and really investing in their draft capital to keep their team good over a longer period of time. That's the route that I would take as a GM. So that being said, the Rams draft capital was already not good, and then you go ahead and trade away for Von Miller, who basically a 1-year rental, and the Denver Broncos get to dump Von Miller while he still has value and get a second and third round pick for him. I think it's a better situation for Von Miller personally if he decide to stay with the Rams, but I think I think Denver wins that trade just because of the draft capital they gained for an aging Von Miller. And then, one last piece of news that came out, which was today. Henry Ruggs III, his NFL career is effectively over. We got involved into an accident this morning that was turned fatal for the victim, who's, I believe, unnamed at this point, but Henry Ruggs was the driver, and he was found to be intoxicated, apparently with alcohol. If all this stands true, which it definitely does seem this way right now. He's already been charged with the DUI, and presumably, I guess, manslaughter would come along with that. Then he's going to go to jail for a long time. In terms of Las Vegas, it was in Las Vegas, so the Las Vegas laws dictate that he's going to get a sentence anywhere from 2 to 20 years. Couldn't tell you what he's going to get if he's even going to be found guilty. Again, I feel personally that when you have a really good lawyer, which Henry Ruggs does because he has a good amount of money, he might be able to get a lighter sentence, that's the American system, and it's kind of unfair, it goes a little bit beyond football, but I don't know what's going to happen with Henry Ruggs. I'd have presumed that the Raiders would release him. I was talking about this Raiders team in my group chat as well. It's just interesting to see they have all these off the field issues with their players. I'll start with Darren Waller because he's the least, because he was a drug addict and no longer is one. Josh Jacobs got a DUI last year. I'm trying to think. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Why am I blanking on his name? The player who recently, Carl Nassib, who recently came out as gay. Given that's not an issue, it's just getting off the field, not football. That's the least of their problems. But John Gruden with his emails, and now Henry Ruggs is effectively no longer a football player. This team's just kind of a mess off the field, given they're winning on the field. So I just think it's a really interesting dynamic when you have all these other things in the news but their football performances. And again, I want to reiterate myself that nothing wrong with Carl Nassib. I 100% support his decision to come out, and it's kind of awesome that he did. It's just something that's not football related. It's just, I guess you could pile in, but I wouldn't really, you can't even really compare it to a DUI or anything like that. So with that being said, I guess that rounds off all our news. So I guess it should be interesting to see what happens with Henry Ruggs. I went ahead and dumped him off my fantasy team today. Just poor mistakes on his part, and it causes somebody their life. So whatever he gets, if he's guilty, and he did it 100%, then there's no saving you, Henry Ruggs. You're going to get what you deserve. You'll have your day in court. With that being said, that pretty much rounds off all the news for the week. So going into the games, first game of the week we had was the Packers and the Cardinals. Packers take it in a pretty close one, 24-21. Aaron Rodgers did what he had to do to win this one, 184 yards and 2 touchdowns, 22 for 37 passing. A.J. Dillon had equal carries to Aaron Jones in this game for 78 yards, but Aaron Jones put up a touchdown, 59 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, Aaron Jones also had 51 yards receiving, Robert Tonyan has 49 yards in this game, goes down with an ACL injury, is now out for the season. So it's kind of a tough blow in terms of tight end spot. Although his receptions have not been great for the past, I'd say, 5 games for the Packers. They really just have not been utilizing him like I think they should have, but 7-1, so they really don't need to. Rodgers is passing around the ball very well. Going into the Cardinals side of things, they suffered their first loss of the season, which I predicted. Kyler Murray, did not do very well in this game, 274 yards and 2 interceptions. Struggled quite a bit. Rushing game was pretty much non-existent for the Cardinals. 30 rushing yards was their leading rusher with Chase Edmonds, rather. Touchdown for him, and then you had 2 touchdowns with Connor. So getting the red zone, you're effective, but through and through, you did not have much of a rushing game there. Then you have DeAndre Hopkins, who rounds out the receiving core with 66 yards, and then you have 50 yards with AJ Green. Ultimately, the Packers are better in this one. Very close game. It shows you, I think, both these teams are Super Bowl contenders without a doubt. Packers are just a better team in this one. I think the Cardinals had a little bit of pressure on them. You go down, you lose J.J. Watt. A couple of confounding factors there that caused them to lose this game. I just didn't think they were a good enough team to stay undefeated throughout the season. And it lose to a very, very good Packers team. If you're a Cardinals fan, you're not overly concerned. You're a Packers fan, you're pretty stoked you beat the undefeated team. So moving on from there, Panthers, Falcons. Not much to say about this game other than Panthers moved to 4-4, Falcons moved to 3-4. Obviously, the Panthers started out 3-0. They lose 3 games in a row, and then 4 games in a row, rather, and then they win this one. Sam Darnold has not been looking fantastic, but 129 yards for him, that's all you can say. Hubbard, 82 yards and a touchdown. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, McCaffrey might be back this week, so it's good for you if you're a Panthers fan or if you have McCaffrey on your fantasy team. Matt Ryan, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 146 yards. Not much to talk about this game. Panthers win this one. Neither team's really going to make the playoffs. Moving on from there, Titans, Colts. Titans win this one in a really close game in OT. Obviously, Derrick Henry goes out for the season. I already talked about that. That's probably the biggest news from this game. Other than that, Colts put a pretty good fight. It's an interdivision battle, so you expect close games, but I think it shows why the Titans are the best team in their division. Ryan Tannehill, 265 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Derrick Henry is held to 68 yards. Again, goes down with plays out the full game, but is out for 6 weeks now with a foot injury. AJ Brown, 155 yards and a touchdown. Mick Nichols, that's his name, Mick Nichols, not Nichols. He had 33 yards receiving in this game. Julio did not play. On the Colts side of things, Wentz, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 231 yards, pretty similar stat line to Tannehill. Taylor doing what he does best, 70 yards and a touchdown. Taylor's been really under the radar in terms of one of those best backs in the league this year, and he just doesn't get talked about enough. But then Michael Pittman Jr., 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. You guys know I love Michael Pittman Jr. I'm glad to see him doing that well. So Titans moved to 6-2, and the Colts moved to 3-5. Moving on from there, we have the Dolphins Bills. Bills take this one 26-11. They would have liked to win by more, but not much to say there. Dolphins are abysmal this season. We talked about it on the podcast multiple times now. There's something wrong with the Dolphins, and it starts from the top down. Their GM has not put enough talent on the field. Some of the guys that showed a little bit of promise out the gate are really not doing well. That offensive line has not performed well. There's definitely not enough talent on it. Tua is not looking great. Dolphins are an absolute mess. And the Bills take a pretty handed win there. Probably would have liked to run them by more, but just how bad the Dolphins are. But win's a win. Moving on from there, Jets upset the Bengals. Jets won this one 2-5. The Jets moved to 2-5. Bengals moved to 5-3. Jets won 34-31. Joe Burrow, 3 touchdowns, 1 reception, 259 yards. Didn't have much of a rushing game here. Mixon was leading rusher for 33 yards on 14 carries and a touchdown. Higgins, 97 yards. I would say that Jamar Chase was held pretty well, 32 yards on a touchdown. Jamar Chase has been fantastic this season, one of his worst games of the season. Everyone's talking about is this guy, Michael White, who I don't even know where he came from. But on the backup on the team, obviously Zach Wilson went down with a knee injury last week. So steps up, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 405 yards. Passed pretty well against a really good Bengals defense this year. So looks like a pretty solid backup there in New York. Carter stepped up for 77 yards and a touchdown. Great for him. Also had 95 yards receiving. Definitely was the workhorse of the game right here. Crowder with 84 yards receiving. Pretty good game for the Jets. They take that one and they upset them, which was pretty surprising. No one expected it, especially with Zach Wilson down. It just goes to show, I think the Jets, again, I think they need time. I think they have the right coaching in place for the most part. I think they have the right quarterback. I just think they need time. And this is one of those games that shows the potential that they may have in the future. Moving on from there, Steelers beat the Browns 15-10. Ben Roethlisberger, 266 yards and a touchdown. Najee Harris, 91 yards and a touchdown. You had Deontay Johnson with 98 yards. Obviously, Juju out for the season. Didn't put up any stats there. Brown side of things, Baker Mayfield comes back, 225 yards. Nick Chubb, 61 yards. And then Landry was our leading receiver of 65 yards. And you had Odell with only one catch for 6 yards. Odell hasn't been great, but also Odell doesn't really get targeted on this team at all. They're hesitant to target him. Doesn't get the targets that he probably should with how talented receiver he is. So it's a big question mark. Like, what are you doing with Odell? That being said, the Browns just have not been at full health this entire year, and it just allows the Steelers to really steal one here, in my opinion. Steelers moved to 4-3, Browns moved to 4-4. Ultimately, again, Steelers are okay, but the Browns should be better. Again, they have injuries on the offensive line, still waiting on Kareem Hunt to come back from IR, et cetera, but I still think they have enough talent to win this game. They really need to figure it out. I really don't know what the issue is there in the Browns. I think it's multiple facets. I think injury is probably the biggest one, but it's go time, Moving on from there, Eagles win 44-6, complete blowout. This Lions team is by far the worst team in the NFL. They're going to get the first overall pick. I have no doubt about it. Not much to say there. Interesting thing about that is, like, I like Dan Campbell. I think he's a well-rounded coach. I think he is a good motivator, but this Lions team lacks a ton of talent. Jared Goff is not good by any means. This Lions team is an absolute mess. It should be interesting to see how they draft or who they draft into this next season. Especially, I expect them to probably want to go quarterback, but there's not a lot of quarterbacks in this next draft, so they may have to wait. They might go with an edge rusher. Should be interesting to see where they go. Rams win 38-22 against the Texans. Rams moved to 7-1. Texans moved to 1-7. Again, not much to say here. Rams are obviously the better team, and Rams just got even better with picking up Miller. But what it costs, I think, at what cost in the long run? That's kind of the issue. Also forgot to mention, Eagles moved to 3-5. Obviously, the Lions are 0-8. Moving on from there, 49ers Bears. 49ers win this one 33-22. 49ers are 3-4. Bears are moved to 3-5. Even though the 49ers are 3-4, I think they're a lot better than the Bears. Justin Fields is, again, watching his games, he's not ready to start in the NFL yet. That kind of forced him into this position. Again, his floor is a little bit lower than Andy Dalton, but his ceiling's a lot higher. But again, he's just not there yet. Passing wise, 175 yards and a touchdown, not fantastic. The real issue, I think, lies with, again, he had a good rushing game, 103 yards for one touchdown. But again, what do you need him for the most? I think we also then play the highlight where he made that really good rush, where I think he juked a couple people out in the backfield, ran to the left side of the field, and picked up a decent change. We're not here to run for him to run. It's a great asset to have, but passing wise, I don't think he's ready for the NFL yet. Hopefully, David Montgomery will come back soon. Khalil Herbert's been pretty good, stepping up 72 yards. But again, not much else to say about this game. 49ers take it. Here's a really good game. Patriots upset the Chargers when the Chargers were at home. 27-24. Patriots moved to 4-4. Chargers moved to 4-3. I'll say this about the game. So I'll start with the Patriots. Mac Jones is probably the best rookie quarterback we've seen out of this class, which is just, me and Max keep reiterating it every week, but it's true. If he doesn't have such good quarterback play, you don't beat the Chargers in this situation. Simple as that. Mac Jones, 18 for 35 passing. Again, still a rookie quarterback. Don't get me wrong, not one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL yet, but one of the best rookie quarterbacks, 100%. 218 yards. Rushing wise, Harris, 80 yards and a touchdown. Aguilar, 60 yards. Again, nothing too special on offense to really talk about. That defense really stepped up. Judon, sack and a half. You had 2 interceptions from Phillips. Then you had a sack by Guy. Again, I think that defense really came through here, and it just goes to show you, Bill Belichick against rookie quarterbacks is always a nightmare. Not rookie quarterbacks, sorry. Rookie and younger quarterbacks. Obviously, Justin Herbert's in his second year. And it really shows here. Justin Herbert, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 223 yards. Pretty not great game for him considering the year that he's had. And this Patriots team is just really good at scheming against young quarterbacks. The way that Bill Belichick sets up this defense, disguises coverages, makes young quarterbacks think too much, and they make mistakes. It's as simple as that. And it shows here. Austin Eckler, not a great game for him, 64 yards and a touchdown. Jackson outran him for 79 yards. Keenan Allen, 77 yards and a touchdown. Again, Patriots went on the road. Patriots, I think, are one of those teams going to sneak in as a playoff team, and I was wrong about them. I didn't really expect them to make the playoffs, especially with a rookie quarterback, but they're doing it. Got to give credit where credit is due. And then moving on from there, Seahawks completely obliterate the Jaguars. I believe that Russell Wilson is probably in the mix to come back this week. Jaguars are an awful team. Seahawks aren't good either. Don't get me wrong, but the Jaguars are just an awful team. Not surprised by this win here. Saints upset the Buccaneers. Buccaneers moved to 6-2. Saints moved to 5-2. 27-36 was the final score in favor of the Saints. Tom Brady, 4 interceptions, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 375 yards. Tom Brady's been fantastic this season. At 44 years old, he's on pace to throw like 50 touchdowns. 2 interceptions is not great. That Saints defense played pretty good, I have to say, but nothing crazy there. Pretty crazy considering how old Tom Brady is, right? They lose this one, unfortunately, but Leonard Fournette didn't really have a great game here. Bernard was the leading rusher with 30 yards rushing. God went to 140 yards and 1 touchdown. Fantastic game for him. Moving on to the Saints side of things. James Winston goes down with an ACL injury. He's down for the year, which was, they really needed him, so that's tough. Trevor Siemian, 159 yards on a touchdown. Not great. Apparently, the Saints are looking at quarterbacks. I saw a rumor on, I forget what website it was, that Phillip Rivers might come out of retirement to sign with the Saints. I doubt it'll happen, to be honest, but if it does, I guess I wouldn't be surprised. There was a rumor about it. But Kamara, 61 yards and a touchdown. Receiving-wise, Kevin White was there, or K. White was there. Is that Kevin White? I forget. It was Kevin White, yeah. Was their leading receiver, which, again, when you look at Kevin White, he's 29 years old, has hardly been in the league. He's a leading receiver of 38 yards. And that was a fantastic game out of the Saints offense, but defense, they played their asses off. Don't get me wrong. Interception for Gardner. You had a sack from Alexander. You had a sack from Tano. And then you also had an interception from P.J. Williams. Pretty good game for that defense against a really good Buccaneers offense. And then they go ahead and they upset the Buccaneers at home. So the Saints are at home. There we go. Next game, Broncos-Washington. Broncos are by far the better team, I think, in this situation. They win at 17-10. Washington moves to 2-6. They're pretty much an irrelevant team at this point. Broncos move to 4-4. Might be able to slide in possibly to the playoffs. They don't have Von Miller anymore, which might hurt their defense a little bit, but I have to say, might be able to sneak into the playoffs regardless. Next game, Cowboys-Vikings. Cowboys take it 20-16. Pretty much how I expect the game to go. Vikings are one of those run-of-the-mill teams that are pretty solid in some games, which I would say this one. Cowboys are still by far the better team. Dak's been out, but Dak, I think, should come back this week, if I'm not mistaken. Rush had 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 reception. And then Mari Cooper had a really good game with 122 yards and a touchdown. And you had Lamb with 112 yards, no touchdowns. Kirk Cousins, 184 yards and a touchdown. Dalvin Cook, 78 yards. And then you had Thielen with 78 yards. Justin Jefferson was held to 2 catches for 21 yards. Handled pretty well there. Moving on from there, final game that happened this week. Chiefs-Giants. I thought this was a fantastic game, especially as a Giants fan. But unfortunately for me as a Giants fan, Chiefs won at 20-17 in a really, really close game. Daniel Jones, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. Giants kind of got killed by, if you watch this game, Giants got killed by flags late in the game, especially. You had the taunting penalty on Elijah Penny. And then you had the offside jump by, I'm trying to remember who it was by, Dexter Lawrence. I forget who it was, but it completely killed the play. I believe it was Darnay Holmes got an interception because he was offsides. Penalty doesn't count. Giants had multiple opportunities to beat the Chiefs here at home, and they failed to do so. Kind of choked it away. Devontae Booker had 60 yards rushing. I thought he looked pretty good. Had 4 yards to carry. Ross was the leading receiver with 72. Booker had 65 yards receiving as well. Kadarius Toney did not have a great game compared to his games in the past. 26 yards only receiving here. I love Kadarius Toney. I think he has a lot of promise for the future. Really fun player to watch. Chiefs side of things, Mahomes looked abysmal in this game. 275 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception. I mean, this game is the epitome of how Mahomes' games have gone throughout this entire season. It just has not been good. Played a ton of mistakes, threw balls that probably should have been interceptions that were dropped. Just not a good look for Mahomes at all. And they only win by a small margin. They're 4-4, and they should be better, but they really should have lost this game. Damien Williams, 49 yards rushing, and then Tyreek Hill's our leading receiver with 94 yards and a touchdown. So that pretty much wraps up our games for the week. Didn't really have Max to bounce off of here, so just going through my thoughts and the stats real quick. Other than that, we have our predictions for next week. So here's the lightning round, 3, 2, 1, lightning round. Here we go. So week 9 of the NFL season, we got the Jets versus the Colts. I might take – I'm going to go with the Colts in this one. They put up a pretty good fight against the Titans. I expect the Jets to kind of have their fluke game against the Bengals last week. I take the Colts in this one. Raiders, Giants. I might take the Giants in this one simply because the Giants nearly beat the Chiefs. They are coming off of a pretty good game again against the Chiefs. The Raiders are kind of a mess right now with everything they have going on off the field. So I really expect the Raiders to crumble at some point. I just don't know when. They're 5-2, so it hasn't happened yet. But again, I thoroughly expect them to fall apart at some point, just how the season's going. I just don't know when. Saints, Falcons. Saints, by far the better team, taking the Saints. Bills, Jags, taking the Bills. Browns, Bengals should be an interesting game. Depending on who plays next week and how healthy everyone is, I'm probably going to go with the Bengals. They just have been a better team this season. Patriots, Panthers, I'm taking the Patriots. Broncos, Cowboys, I'm taking the Cowboys. Vikings, Ravens, I'm taking the Ravens. Texans, Dolphins, what a toilet bowl that is. I'm going to take the Texans. They just have been better. The Dolphins have been an absolute mess. Chargers, Eagles, Chargers. Packers, Chiefs, Packers. Cardinals, 49ers, Cardinals. Titans, Rams, probably going to be a good one, but Rams for sure. They picked up Von Miller. Titans are without Derrick Henry, who was pretty much having over 30 carries for them. They're not going to be able to just switch in 1 week and go, we're going to remove that part of our offense. They'll try and replace it with AP and Nicholson, but they're going to have to find ways to move the ball. They're not going to be able to do that in just 1 week, especially with how many the pure volume that Derrick Henry had, let alone his talent. So Rams in that one, and then Bears, Steelers. Going to be a good one. I'll take the Steelers in this one by a pretty good margin. The Steelers are probably the better team at this point. So I guess that wraps up our week. I hope you guys enjoyed. Probably a little bit of a shorter one here. Again, only me. Max was busy this week, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Other than that, I'll see you guys next week. Go check out our Instagram again, the NFLuniverse.tsu. We're posting updates there. We'll post a little bit of highlight clips there. So it's a pretty good page to follow. Hope I see you guys there. Other than that, see you guys next week.